right, everybody. So I think the time is now. Welcome to the ListHub webinar, How 3 Websites Grew Their Business in Record Time. So to get things started today, I will first introduce myself. My name is Celeste Starchild. I'll be your moderator today for the discussion that we're about to have. I'm the Senior Vice President of Professional Software at Move, and in my role, I work to advance our professional software services for the industry. That includes overseeing well-established brands and products like ListHub, Top Producer, 5 Street, along with new product lines such as RealSuite, the recently announced end-to-end, lead-to-close productivity toolkit for brokers and agents. But effectively, my job is to expand access and usage of marketing and productivity tools for brokers and agents, our customers across the country, help make them more successful, and ultimately help strengthen their role in the center of the transaction. So what we're going to do today is we have several panelists that we're going to be chatting with. In terms of how we're going to run the discussion today, we're going to talk for a little bit, and at the end, we will be taking questions. So we welcome questions from the audience. We're going to be using the chat and questions features on the right-hand side. You'll see in your control panel on the webinar. So throughout the presentation and the conversation today, feel free to use the chat tool or use the questions tool to put your questions in. We will be answering those at the end of the webinar, so we'll be saving them up until the end. So first, I'll share a little bit for those of you who are not familiar with ListHub. ListHub is a platform that was founded back in 2006. So ListHub's been around for a very long time. As such, we're the largest platform that does what we do and most well known and trusted. So we effectively work between the MLS and brokers in the industry and various companies, websites, publishers of listing content to create a platform for brokers and agents to advertise their listings. So what we do today is nationwide. We in fact move 2.5 million listings every single day, from somewhere to somewhere. We support over 60,000 brokerage firms today. That number continues to grow. We're seeing approximately 300 new firms registering for a brand new ListHub account each month. So that number steadily grows over time. We work with about 600 MLSs nationwide. The MLS count at 600, we have most of the large MLSs. So if you look at the proportion of coverage that represents nationwide, it is just over 90% of the active listings across the U.S. that brokers are enabled if they want to, send their listings to one or more of the sites and services that are in the ListHub network. And then, what we do is we pull the listings together. We streamline that data and we normalize it, and we license to companies that operate consumer-facing real estate search websites and other types of marketing tools, some offline marketing tools, online marketing tools, and we really just make it easy because we provide that data with one set of requirements and one implementation. And we support about 240 different real estate websites and other marketing products through this service. So it's a wide and vast network. And so that's just a little bit of background around ListHub. But the reason why we're here today is, we're such a data-driven world and society, which is great. We live in this increasingly numbers-driven world, and any good researcher, I think, knows that good research should be both quantitative as well as qualitative. And so in the spirit of a more qualitative look at the ListHub platform, we're here today to get an inside view of just 3 of the companies and products that participate in the ListHub network, a qualitative view, if you will. And these 3 companies are very, very, very different from one another. And I think they represent a terrific cross-section of the diverse marketing services that brokers and agents can access through ListHub. So without further ado, let me introduce our panelists. We are going to be speaking today with Brian Coyne, the head of business operations and revenue for Zumper. We also have today Ann Sperling. Ann is the president and founder of Tour Factory. And we have Michael Edlund. Michael is the VP of Interactive Media for LuxuryRealEstate.com. So what we want to do today is start by going around the horn to hear directly from each one of our panelists and just get a profile, an overview of each one of their companies and their services. So let's go ahead and get started, and let's begin with you, Brian.
Hi there. Thanks, Celeste. Can everybody hear me okay now?
Yes, we can hear you.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. And yeah, so my name is Brian Coyne. I'm the head of business operations and revenue over here at Zumper. Zumper is a millennial brand focused exclusively on the rental industry. So we actually engaged with ListHub roughly 3.5, 4 years ago to kind of grow out some of our rental inventory across the country. We are heavily focused on mobile users and millennials. That's kind of a core area that we look at. We are the fastest growing internet listing site in the country for rentals, and we focus on all different types of rentals, everything from the single family home rental all the way up through large institutional multifamily units in large cities. So in terms of just a little bit more kind of color and flavor for who Zumper is, we've kind of grown quite quickly. And again, I think as part of this panel discussion is kind of how we have leveraged ListHub to grow as fast as we have. So we now have several million users, over 4.5 million in the peak of summer that we use to send leads to landlords and agents across our 2 brands, Zumper and PadMapper. If you look at that kind of that growth in terms of monthly visits over time, again, as I mentioned, roughly in the January 2014 timeframe, which you can see there quite early and minuscule, is when we started leveraging the content through ListHub, and then we've grown quite quickly. We acquired a company called PadMapper back in January of 2016. They were also, unsurprisingly, a ListHub client as well. So we actually leverage the ListHub services across both of our products, both Zumper and PadMapper, to show rental content to our users across our web and our 2 mobile applications on both iOS and Android. So if we move to the next slide, I'll just show you guys a little bit about some of the products that we have. So from a search perspective, we're trying to build beautiful product that millennials will kind of gravitate towards. So you want to give them real-time information about a rental. It's not just price, it's making sure it's got beautiful photography associated with it, that the information is indeed correct, and make it really easy for people to interact back and forth about their interest in a rental property. So we spend a lot of time building out both our mobile and our web products. We then try to layer on a little bit more service on top of it. So really trying to help the consumer and the agent streamline that process. So we actually offer tour scheduling applications that cut back on the back and forth between an agent and a prospective tenant saying, are you available at this time? Are you available at that time? We just kind of use technology to cut that out. And then I think the last thing that we really focus on is how do we take some of the paper and the unnecessary kind of challenges that happen at the end of a real estate transaction and move that into more of an online world. So we're the first platform where a renter can really go through this whole process of search, tour, and then book. But one of the most important things that we view ourselves as, and I spoke about this at the beginning, is we're a true rental marketplace. and you don't have a marketplace without great marketplace liquidity, which means a lot of great listings and then a lot of great users. So that's just Zumper in a nutshell, and thanks for having us.
Well, hi, this is Ann Sperling. Celeste, did you want me to go ahead and start?
Yes, sorry, I was on mute. Ann, yes, please get started. We'd love to hear from you next.
Okay, all right, awesome. All right, well, thanks for having me here today as well. We've certainly enjoyed our relationship with ListHub because it's meant a lot to our business and most importantly to our customers' user experience. And so way back in the day, as a former real estate agent and broker, in October of 1995, we placed our first premium property website, also known as a virtual tour, online. And so literally back in the day, it was the only one. It was 12 still photo images, and that they included the interior of the home. It was revolutionary at the time. 2% of the public was online with the internet, and internet connections were slow, and photography was film and not digital. So we later received a patent for our virtual tour technology, which leveraged our experience and credibility with our customer. Our customer is the real estate agent and broker. So that was 22 years ago, and technology and visual media has really changed a lot, and it's even kind of really fun. So, but what has not changed has been the core needs of our customer, the real estate agent and broker. So a little bit of background for those of you not familiar with the real estate agent and broker livelihood. In order for a real estate agent to obtain a successful career, they list property to stay in business. It's list or die is an industry mantra that we used to all say. So for an agent to list property well, they need a premium property website to deliver critical content on behalf of the real estate seller to the real estate buyer so that the agent may elicit a buying decision from the buyer. So in our next slide is an example showing that we integrated ListHub data services to auto-populate our premium property websites for each individual listing. So that would be the next slide. And the next slide, so that's that slide. And then if we move to the next slide, ListHub data services also provide auto-population of our photos for individual agents and our broker enterprise solutions. And the next slide represents how we use ListHub data to auto-populate detailed property information. And the next and final slide shows how we help the agent alleviate redundancy and make the agent's work easier. So we were attracted to using ListHub because they capture the original data entered at the MLS broker admin level, which eliminates the need for an agent to manually enter the information when they create their listing marketing products with our company, Tour Factory. So alleviating the agent from a duplicate manual entry prevents errors, and that's significantly important in the world of real estate and transferring information to a buyer. So by eliminating the errors, it also provides confidence and reliability in the data and the services that we provide in our premium property websites so that the consumers as well as the agents have confidence in the data. So our biggest win with ListHub is that it actually powers our sales for broker enterprise solutions. Brokers want to syndicate their agents' listings to major advertising portals, but even more importantly, they want to build their own brand by providing valuable seller and buyer services and by offering a collective display of all of their agents' listings and services. So ListHub data integration substantiates that for us in Tour Factory's competency and efficiencies of delivery of that information, trust and ease of use, providing for our customer a great user experience. And so we're very appreciative of the services provided by ListHub and their team of friendly professionals, because they actually take the time to work with us directly in relationship to help build our businesses. So it's been a great relationship, and the integration is powerful for all of us.
And thank you so much for the tour, no pun intended, of Tour Factory and what you do. Very helpful. And next, let's hear from Michael Edlund. Michael.
Yeah, hi there, and thank you for having me. My name is Michael Edlund. I'm the VP of Interactive Media for LuxuryRealEstate.com and Who's Who in Luxury Real Estate. And I really am fortunate to work for this company because it's got a very rich history, I think. So the company has been around for over 30 years at this point, and it started with a book. And it started because the owner of our company, John Brian Losh, he is also the owner of a local brokerage here in Seattle called Ewing & Clark. It's the oldest brokerage on the West Coast, founded in 1905. So even there is a lot of history. He had a couple of, or some clients that asked him, Brian, I want to buy a second and third home in these and those markets. Who do you want me to talk to there? And this being, you know, pre-internet or pre-web anyway, he knew people in some places, but not in all the places. And so he thought there is a need to create a network where, you know, we know each other and we dare to refer business to one another. So he basically took his Rolodex, had a book made with each person in the Rolodex got a page in the book. He then sent out a copy of the book to everybody and said, listen, you don't know each other, all of you, but I know and vouch for every single person in this book. And so even if you don't know each other, you dare to refer business to one another and send your buyers to others in this book. And which led to the result that the ones that were in the book got back to him and said, you know, there's this person that I can really vouch for and that I think should be in it. And this book, this network grew, and out of that came conferences that we put on twice a year here in North America and 2 events in Europe. And people pulled together to print coffee table books that we put in Ritz-Carltons and so forth. And then came the web. And so this network of people, while it's the core product is the network itself, and it's a membership-based organization, what my team work on is LuxuryRealEstate.com. And when we see the next slide here, you'll also see I included a couple of screenshots there to the right from our Apple TV app and so forth. And so, but since we have members in over 60 countries, data is a big challenge for us because each country has, you know, different ideas of what they think should be in a data feed. And over the years, we've come a long way, and it's this journey that took us eventually to ListHub that I want to share a few points about. Initially, back when the site was launched in '95, all the listings were entered manually. And quite soon after, we introduced a very basic system of CSV data file uploads through FTP. And soon we approached MLSs, and we got a vendor agreement signed, and we started integrating with MLSs to import data directly. But that also was cumbersome because, first of all, we had to deal with a lot of different delivery methods. There were SOAP and REST APIs, some used FTP, and so forth. And then the data mapping, RESO, Real Estate Standards Organization, wasn't really a thing. And so everybody had their own idea of the names of the fields. And it was a tedious process to map this for each MLS. And then the bulk, we had, basically we got the IDX dump of all the listings from everybody. And because we only maybe had 2 or 3 members in each market, we downloaded so much data that was just noise and that we had no use for. So we kind of went around the block and we worked with WolfNet for a while, and that got rid of the pain points of setting up the retrieval and but data mapping was kind of still a thing and the bulk was still a thing. Then we moved to RED, Real Estate Digital. They did some amount of data mapping, but we still had to tweak some data mapping there, and the bulk was definitely still a thing as well. So, which brought us to ListHub. So that does a phenomenal job with data mapping, and the bulk isn't a thing anymore either, because we're not, a public publisher. Our members need to put in a code for us to show up. So we don't get listings from those that aren't members. And so this brings us to today, where we of course need to still deal with data imports from other countries than the US, but to largely have the US solved has taken a tremendous amount of weight off my team's shoulders.
Great, Michael. Thank you so very much. So what we'll do from here, maybe we'll just break it down, have a little conversation on kind of dig in a little bit deeper on how these guys work. Again, I want to reiterate, we are taking questions, so I'd love to have you guys who are on the line with us send your questions in through the control panel, either through the chat feature or through the questions feature. Either one works. So I'm going to ask a couple questions of you, Brian. You showed us that chart that was incredible, that demonstrated your growth, or somewhere around, I guess, January of 2014. Going from 10,000 visitors to 4.5 million per month is really tremendous. So I kind of have to ask, what does that have to do with ListHub? You mentioned it sort of correlated with the time when you implemented the feed, and I think I'd like to help our audience understand that correlation better.
Yeah, so I mean, I think as a marketplace business, which we are, you have to have a lot of supply to attract customers. And we, when I first joined the organization back before we raised our Series A round, the goal that I was tasked with was building out inventory. So I went and I spoke to individual agents, and we talked to various maybe MLSs directly in some markets. We talked to property management companies, but I mean, building out inventory is it's a long slog, and I wouldn't envy any organization trying to kind of start that from scratch. And I think what we started to look at was like, what are some of the smart ways for us to build out the listing inventory so that we can have an amazing consumer experience on our platform. And we were actually working with a subset of the ListHub inventory in a couple of markets, but that was when we made the decision to kind of go nationwide. And I mean, really what it allowed us to do was, even in markets where we didn't have any ground presence, we were able to serve, in Indianapolis, we could serve a whole bunch of rental listings that we didn't have to have a direct relationship with, and it allowed us to improve the customer experience when they came and used what we thought were amazing products, but that they get better with amazing content. And so we've actually, it's been a great partnership for us. It powers, it's probably the single largest entity that we have that powers listings for us. And again, without it, we probably wouldn't have grown as fast as we did.
Gotcha. So for you, Brian, do you think it's mostly about content and the experience for consumers, or is it also about content and how that helps with SEO? Is it a little bit of both?
Yeah, it's a little bit of everything. I mean, I think like SEO is, hey, how many pages do you have that are interesting? And when you're able to plot more pages, that definitely has an SEO uplift. It can help with SEO also from a site engagement perspective, right? If somebody comes to a site and there's 2 listings and they leave right away, that's a bounce rate. If they come to the listing or the site and there's a bunch of listings, they're going to be engaged with the product, and Google is happy with the fact that your site has engagement from users that find content through it. So it's a multitude of factors. The SEO is definitely a factor, and then of course just user engagement is a factor. When they have more items to look at that kind of fit their budget and their pricing and their locality, they're just going to be better users of your product.
Right, gotcha. And then you mentioned, different feed sources. So you work with other rental data sources. So tell us a little bit about that. What proportion is ListHub versus other sources? And have you tried other methods for data acquisition, like going direct to brokers, MLSs, et cetera? Kind of what's been your experience there?
Yeah, we probably have somewhere in the neighborhood of 350 data feeds. Every data feed, it's a sizable undertaking for our engineering team, and then for our business team as well, just to kind of like figure out the who's who, market over market. So the majority of the feeds that we get are going to be smaller property management companies who might not leverage an MLS. So that probably makes up somewhere around 60% of our overall inventory is probably coming from smaller property management companies. But there is this sizable rental component that runs through the MLS. So that's where a ListHub is doing a lot of the heavy lifting for us in the single family homes or condos in some of the larger cities. But the beauty of the ListHub relationship really was, to your point earlier, you have 600 MLSs. We all time in 4 years have done roughly 300 or 400 technical integrations. That's 600 integrations that I didn't have to have my tech team do. So that's a large part of the benefit the ListHub relationship has brought to us.
Great, super. Thanks for the insights. I want to sort of move maybe over to talk a little bit more with Anne. Anne, during your segment, you talked a lot about your sales process, and I was hoping you could, share some insight with the audience about how working with ListHub impacts the staff that you have in the field who work with brokers and agents, who purchase your marketing services. And I guess I'm just sort of curious about that moment in time, right, when, your team is working with maybe a new prospect, a new brokerage prospect, and, the question comes up, how would we get our data into this system, and how does it work? I'm just curious, kind of how does ListHub impact that point of sale or that sell through for your team?
Okay, great. Thanks, Celeste. So part of the conversation that we have with a broker is the relationship that we have already with them, and the dedication that solving the broker's problem for wanting to not interrupt the marketing and the brand that the broker wants to have, and yet the independent realtor wants the unique positioning. So the confidence in the data that you provide as far as redundancy, just having that single point of contact, whether it's the broker's information that's going out, they just have the confidence that we're using the same information, so that less room for errors in that relationship, so that we can blend all of that information together. I think that is really where the core is for the broker. They just have come to trust that the process in which we capture the information is good, credible.
Right. And I was thinking about something when you were talking about data accuracy. seems to me that not only would it be clearly, less cumbersome when, things like price changes and, data changes are automatically represented in all the marketing materials. But I was curious about liability as well, right? Truth in advertising and things like that. Is there a kind of a liability component or just a compliance component to, making sure their marketing tools are being updated with, MLS status and accuracy?
Well, most certainly. Definitely, there are compliance and liabilities on every aspect of the transaction in that regard for a broker. You have your MLS agreement that you have with the broker to follow the rules and the protocols that are established by the members of the MLS and the boards therein. And then there are, legalities and the privacy issues that come up from the industry, copyright laws. I mean, there's disclosures and E&O insurance for the agent communicating the right information. So that's always, so the less you have people inputting or, adding in the data and the more responsibility you have one point of entry and then you can duplicate that same entry, there's room for less error. And that's the opportunity you're providing to us then to say, hey, before you input this listing, Mr. Agent, because I know you're kind of ventured off on your own, maybe perhaps for this property display, do you have information here that we can pull for you? And so that's the offering that we offer. And with our enterprise solutions, we kind of lock that in the front end with the broker and work to say, how do you want to make sure this happens? So it's a custom build out, but because of your resources, you allow us that utility to transfer that information easily to protect in the liability and not just in legal liabilities. No broker wants to have to face a disappointed seller or buyer, for that matter, for not providing information in a manner that led to the truth of what is, right? You want to be able to be known. That's one of the most valuable components that a broker has in building his brand, is building his reputation for integrity and competency and caring in how they treat the seller's information. And so I think we take a lot of pride as a company in doing that. And that's one of the reasons that we came to you since we started out in manual entry in 1995. You started in 2006 and we were there. We were one of your early adopters saying, hey, help us make this better for our customers.
Right. So, wow. So back then, I'm curious how it's changed. So when you first joined the network in 2006, I was there at the same time, by the way. So we've both been with ListHub since 2006. So at that time, ListHub, of course, was brand new. And I'm guessing that your team probably might have had to do a little bit of education, right, to a broker. So maybe you were setting up a new client and you wanted to use ListHub as the data synchronization tool, right? And you probably had to maybe even instruct them about, what ListHub is and where to go to set up their account. Has that changed over time? And do brokers know what ListHub is? I hope I don't regret asking this question. How has that changed over the years?
So most brokers don't. Okay, so there's been controversy too over the years of sharing data and having data, and not everyone has always been on board with how that's done. So so there's some brokers that might not be participating in ListHub. So when we are able to set it up, we don't always have to disclose. We don't always disclose or enter into the conversation about ListHub. But if the broker is not utilizing or functioning or wants a special process of information sharing between their MLS and their websites, and they don't have that set up, that's when we introduce ListHub and let them know that they can reach out and contact ListHub to get a feed set up directly with them so that we can integrate it too. And they're happy about that. Yeah.
Gotcha. Great. Okay. And then, I was just reflecting back, Ann, you and I spoke a little while back before this discussion today, and I remember you talking a little bit about some of the ways that you are kind of you're a smarter company because you have sort of the finger on the pulse of the listing inventory across the country, just by virtue of understanding kind of inventory as it grows and shrinks over time, right? And understanding which markets, maybe, there's more opportunity in one market versus another for your business, in understanding that inventory. And I was wondering if you wanted to maybe speak to that a little bit for the group.
Absolutely. So my passion is creating jobs, and I truly believe that a listing for an agent is a new job, right? So managing trends of the industry and how it works and how well, where it's listing, what's happening, and seeing that ebb and flow of how it goes on a national scope really kind of gives a strong insight of where to go to get the business, where to do, how to empower the business, because you can marry those trends with other trends that are having and other influences in the marketplace, and recognize what innovation needs to be developed, what conversation needs to be had, how does this broker leverage his business, and all those trends are actually found within your system to be able to help leverage that what's the next best product to develop. So we look at that data very heavily for those purposes, and we bring that knowledge forth to our broker clients and agent clients. So we like it.
Great, Anne. Okay. So much for those insights. Let's maybe go over and chat with Michael a little bit more too. Michael, what a fascinating history. I really, and Anne too, and Brian, you're relatively speaking the new kid on the block, but we really have a couple of industry veterans here on the call, and it's really interesting to go back to the book as you showed us the origins of the Who's Who book. It really is real estate is a relationship business after all. But I think what I wanted to ask you more about is these pain points that you mentioned. You kind of mentioned 3 key pain points, and I wanted to explore those a little bit more. Maybe could you just share those 3 again? And I took a couple notes, but I think you can probably speak to them best.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, the first pain point is setting up the actual kind of data retrieval. You need to get the data from somewhere to somewhere, and it's easier today because there's evolving standards than early on. There were different types of APIs that had a very different requirements and file transfers and so forth. So that in itself was a pain point back in the day, and the bulk. But what I really like to kind of stress is the data field mapping, because I mentioned that we really appreciate that someone else, in this case ListHub, does the data field mapping for us, and that we get a coherent format. But it's not just that ListHub maps it into their own random format. It's they picked, so the format we get from ListHub is in the RESO, so Real Estate Standards Organization, their syndication format. And RESO is a work group that contains members from all the MLSs and the big industry players, and that have agreed on this this common language for real estate transactions and for what to call things. And so for us to get this data in this standardized format is very valuable, because it's a format that is governed by this work group. It feels very future safe. And another thing that I really appreciated when I kind of went over my options before we chose to work with ListHub is that it's the format that has the best international support. So if just looking at, for example, Zillow's syndication format that they have published, on their website, doesn't handle international currencies. Country is kind of assumed to be the U.S. and other little things that would make it really hard for us to use those other formats. Whereas the RESO syndication format that we get from ListHub has good support for currencies and good support for international data. And so when we take on new members in Europe, for example, we suggest this format to our clients and our members in Europe. So we're a proponent. We don't only consume this format, we're a proponent of it, and we're helping advocating it and spreading it so it's becoming more and more common. And we're getting a lot of feeds now from Europe in the same feed format that we get from ListHub.
Wow. So to be clear, for the audience, ListHub doesn't work with international listings per se, but the format itself is international listing friendly as it relates to the currencies. And so therefore, it sounds like, Michael, you guys are using the same format when you're working with data sources abroad. Is that right?
That is absolutely correct.
Gotcha.
And also because of my kind of investment in this format, that also led, to luxuryrealestate.com becoming a member of RESO, and so we are, actively participating in this work group to help, define this format going forward. Great.
And then one of the pain points you mentioned is about the bulk data. And Michael, your organization is one of the partners in our network. We use the term affiliate to describe this, and I wanted to maybe provide a little bit more color to the audience about how that works in the ListHub environment. And effectively, what it means is that your company, Luxury Real Estate, is in charge of basically who's a member and who's not, who's eligible effectively to provide listings to your experience versus who is not eligible. Whereas, a company like Zumper, by contrast, invites any and all brokers who choose to advertise their rental listings on Zumper. They're welcome to do so through ListHub, right, if they have that ListHub feed in place. And so it's different in that you really don't want all the data. You only want the data for those members that have the right to display their gorgeous, by the way, luxury properties on your website. And so the way that works in the ListHub experience is a brokerage can go into their ListHub account and they effectively type a special code in ListHub to enable luxuryrealestate.com as a destination for their listings. And that code is something that is distributed only by luxuryrealestate.com. So ListHub's customer care or sales team is not authorized or enabled to provide that code. Rather, it's a tool for the team at Luxury Real Estate to control, who has access to the benefits of membership and who does not. So I just wanted to share that with the group. And as a result, that is why, Michael and his team and his technology team is able to receive only the listings that they want and none of the listings that they don't, so that they don't have to kind of bother with the parsing process that they would otherwise have to deal with. So, Michael, I want to kind of ask one other pointed question about, the format and so forth. I think, today with the advances in RESO and certainly, at the time when you started, there weren't standards for the mapping. And, today I think that certainly it's gotten a whole lot more consistent. Do you still see a need or a benefit to working with ListHub versus with the better consistency in the ability to acquire data from the MLSs? Why not go direct?
Well, even though it's getting easier, it's still not a question of just flipping a switch. It's very valuable to have, one source. And so when there is a question, it's very easy to troubleshoot and just to keep it simple. So, I mean, we have one of the reasons also we like working with ListHub is because it's very personal, and there's value in itself to work with a company, I think, where you can have a dialogue about how things work and if you would want it to work differently. And so in that way, I see it as I don't think, or I would hope that how we work with ListHub in a few years from now is different from how we work with you today, but it's something will kind of evolve together.
I would agree with what Michael says there. I would second that. Amen to that. Single source, the use, and how we work together with you. I think that's critically important, that it's such a fragmented industry, and to try to capture everyone else and timely and blend everything, it makes it much more complicated, where the simplicity really helps us trust the outcome and be able to produce something at an acceptable speed to market, that works for everybody.
Speed to market, right.
Mm-hmm.
Great. I'm seeing some questions come in. So I want to reiterate for the audience, please send in your questions. We're here to talk. We want to hear what's on your mind. I'm going to start going through the ones that we have here. We have a question that comes in from Barry, who asks, how do you see the trends in alternative types of real estate organizations changing the way things are being done today? Alternative types of real estate organizations. So guessing that's alternate brokerage models, perhaps?
I would guess that.
Anybody on the panel want to take that one?
I'll give it a shot.
Great, Anne.
Okay. Yeah, there's some great alternative. I don't know if we're talking specifically. There's a couple new ways of people are presenting technology and in alternative real estate. One being that they're using technology to gain a higher commissions, and then the other being an alternative to real estate in robotizing the industry, meaning making it very mechanical and analytical and less involved at the professional level because of and going at the discounted commissions. I don't want to make it all about the fact that the commission is discounted. That's been around since well before my time. I think that the concept is undermining what necessarily means to be a professional in real estate and using the networks of the professional. So I think that, I guess the question is, what do I think that I think the gross margins for the traditional broker, in order for him to do his job really well at the benefit of the customer, is significantly important and needs to be remained, as well as it, the technology serves the human being, right? Not the other way around. And I think that the brokers in the traditional format with the commissions are really making a stance for what it means to be a professional looking for that opportunity. And in the meantime, they have another segment of alternative real estates that are undermining that concept of a professional and what it means to deliver that. So I think it's, yes, they're butting heads, and yes, they'll probably gain some strength.
Right. Yes, and I want to just sort of add a little bit to your comments, and those are great insights, and sort of to your point about the different groups. And what we're seeing very clearly in our research is the continued strong need and desire for a trusted professional from consumers to be able to help them through this process. So we are seeing that as probably the continues to be the strongest trend among the consumers in our research that we're finding.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So we need a loud voice.
Right.
Action.
Great. So we have a question here that's specifically for Zumper. Brian, What marketing tactics helped you grow your network most effectively? Marketing tactics.
Yeah, I mean, I think from our perspective, we just tried to, in markets that we cared about, move up the Google algorithm. So kind of iterating, testing, doing those things to make sure that we're doing well from an SEO perspective. But I think the core thing that we try to do is just build a great product that people will recommend to their friends or anybody else looking. So when we also build great product, we've had our apps featured on the Apple iOS store, the Android Google Play store. So it's really kind of it's a multitude of things, and I couldn't say that there's exactly one thing that we've done over time. But I think if you can't just do, if you build great product, they will come. You build great product, but then you work on doing the things that are going to get that product in front of as many eyeballs as possible. So that's where you have to play a game with regards to the Google search algorithm. And then, of course, you do marketing, paid marketing, and you kind of test it, and you kind of test and you retest, and that's how you learn about whether or not your product is actually delivering on those promises. So yeah, a multitude of things, but I'd say the most important thing we did was build great product, but then also kind of continue to test and iterate on top of that.
Great answers. Great answers. Got another question here. How have you guys seen photo quality change over time? Any takers?
Oh yeah, major. It's photo quality, and the adoption of photo quality has certainly changed. I mean, the real estate agent that hires a professional photographer is certainly doing more business and getting more sales at a higher dollar volume. That's for certain. It took a long time to go from, first we had the MLS drive-by shooter, and then we had the, oh, that's probably not appropriate. We had the MLS single photo, and then we had agents, and we do still see 10% of the marketplace in our industry taking their own photos with the cameras, but most people are, having a professional take that photo. And it's exciting because photo is turning into video, and video is kind of working and is going to be the flagship of the future. And then we have 3D that's introducing itself. So the quality is significantly important, and the delivery of that quality is becoming even more important. So it makes a huge difference.
I agree. Imaging is an area that has developed tremendously and continues to do so. And, with 3D and all of the things that we have now, really, really exciting. I've got another question. Any advice for new oh, wait, do we have another answer on that?
Well, I just wanted to stress also that whatever image limitations there are, it's in this context, it's from the MLS. It's not because of ListHub anyway. Whereas we did work with a partner in the past that also processed the images, so the images were kind of resized down to a standard size. But we would not want that. We want whatever the MLS has, and so we can get the best quality possible.
Yeah, that needs to be improved still in most MLSs.
Mm-hmm. Right, good point. Mm-hmm. Couple more questions coming in here. So we have one. Have you seen improvement in your search rankings or SEO after partnering with ListHub?
I mean, this is Brian. Happy to speak to that one. So the definitive answer is yes, right? When you're talking about the ability to add hundreds of thousands of units of inventory, and if you kind of are able to kind of surface those in the right way, clearly that can have an impact. And of course there are, again, testing is incredibly important to make sure that you're going to realize those benefits and that you're kind of surfacing the data in the proper way. But certainly it's had a major impact for us at Zumper.
Great. Anything to add from the group? I have one more. Oh, go ahead, Ann.
Oh, I was going to say that I think that ours is more based on the keywords of the entry that we that the agent and that we put in, and the video components and the photography components helps with the search more.
Right.
So, yeah.
Interesting. Good tip. So we have one final question, and I think this would be great for maybe each one of our panelists to answer. I'd like to hear from all of you guys on this one if you have something. So do you have any advice for new companies, pitfalls you would have avoided?
Brian, happy to start. I would say find shortcuts. So anywhere where you can get to a large part of whatever you're trying to achieve with kind of one swing, utilize that. And I think it's something we do kind of in many different tacks that we're trying to do in terms of business strategies through the company. And I think ListHub is an example of that in terms of listing inventory for us. So find ways for you to kind of take care of a lot of things with one swing would be advice from me.
Yeah, and I completely agree. And I kind of touched on the whole keeping it simple, why that is important before as well. But I would also add to, I'm harking on the whole standard thing. I think that if there are two options and one, you sense that one has a better lifespan ahead of it itself, go with that option to always try to be future safe, because otherwise you'll put yourself into technical debt, and you have to every day that goes by, that technical debt increases, and the harder it'll get to get out of it or to start over at some point in the future. So think ahead.
Think ahead. I like it. Build to the future.
Yeah, I think we're fine. We're coming to a place where we found that we came out with a really great idea and a set structure, and what we found that every broker and every agent wants to be unique in some way. And what we found is that we tried to force everyone into a similar same box. And so what we've learned, but we always created, and we kept creating new custom. And so I think over the time, why we don't regret having done that, it held us back for a little while, but then we found that it is going to always be that way. Everyone has a unique need in the manner. So what we had to do was find a formula of standardization that could then be agile. And I think that took the 20-some years that we needed to, and the experience with others. So, but having that core structure, that starting point, be the same is what we found had to happen, and to find those barriers of agility and flexibility to be able to meet the demands of our particular market.
Mm-hmm. And I can really relate to that. As we serve the same audience, I can definitely relate to what you found there. Well, I think we are approaching the end of our hour, and I want to say, first of all, thank you to the audience and all those of you who are on the phone attending with us today. Please, if you have other questions, don't hesitate to send them into ListHub. We'll answer them or help get them answered as best we can. If you want to talk to somebody at ListHub about the ListHub services, then Michelle Combs, VP of Partner Relations, is the right person to talk to. Next, I want to thank from the bottom of my heart the three panelists that we've had here today. I think it's really special for all of us to have the opportunity to hear from three who have really experienced a lot in the industry and in their business, who bring really diverse perspectives and who have all demonstrated remarkable success in what I would consider to be a very challenging vertical. And so, congratulations on your success. And Brian and Ann and Michael, thank you so very much for being with us today. We are grateful for your partnership and look forward to continued fruitful relationship. And again, thank you so very much on behalf of the audience as well.
Thank you all.
Thank you.